My nose itches.
Always.
Yep, always itches. So welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast, everybody. My name is Clayton. I'm the lead pastor of Trinity New Life Church. I am joined by Chayil Brenda, executive director, co-host of Beyond Sunday, and reoccurring special guest, friend of the program. Maybe you'll be up for one of those, like those reoccurring guest stars.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get added to series regular.
Maybe.
Yeah. But Kelly Bell, my wife.
Hello.
My wife. No, boy,
Wow.
Borat jokes are not up to date. So, hey, babe.
Hi.
And we are recapping our decade event yesterday, the beginning of our decade-long series. No, it's not going to be that long.
It's not a decade long. It might feel like that by like week 4.
The book of Genesis, line by line. No, recapping our first week of a decade, our sermon series over the break. And if you want to interact with the podcast, ask us questions about the sermon series, or if you want to ask us any other random questions, you can do so at podcast@Trinity New Life, and follow along with us on Instagram at Trinity New Life. And that's also our YouTube username. And our YouTube channel is going to be where you can comment below. We've been doing that the last couple of weeks. You guys are doing a great job. But we're actually going to give a little bit of prizes away.
Oh.
So yeah, we're not there yet.
Giveaway.
So before we get to the giveaway, which is going to be at an undetermined period of time in the podcast, because we really haven't determined it.
It's literally undetermined.
Let's talk about yesterday.
It's great.
Let's talk about Sunday. And then we have one or two questions that have asked us what's our favorite moment over the last decade.
Oh, gosh.
I didn't,
should have prepped me for that,
Well,
man.
I got the podcast question, and I still have no answer for it, so don't know what prep would have done.
It's a hard question. It's just a hard question.
So just as a recap for everybody, yesterday we sang, we shot confetti cannons, we showed a documentary.
Go a little bit further back. Yesterday was
Saturday?
the 10-year anniversary of weekly services.
Yes.
So if everyone's like, well, what's the 10th anniversary? But the timeline starts in August. So why are we? No, this is weekly.
August.
Yes.
So July of 2009 we moved.
Yes.
August of 2009 we had our first interest meeting at our house.
Right.
Not the house we live in now. We rented one before that. And then we started preview services November 9th of 2009 and at the YMCA.
Those are monthly.
Those were, monthly. We did November, December, January, 2 in February.
Yes.
And then that's when we went monthly in March.
Weekly in March.
Weekly in March of 2000, March 14th, 2010. And then that became the anniversary that we started celebrating from that moment on.
A lot of things in March in our family.
Yeah. My birthday,
Caroline's
birthday,
church birthday. All in 1 week.
Daylight savings.
Yeah.
And so that's how you know the 14th is actually the anniversary weekend. And so why not celebrate it on the 15th? Well, because it was daylight savings weekend that we launched the church. So might as well keep that train rolling.
Really?
Yeah. But when your first service is 10:30, it doesn't really make as big of a difference.
No,
now when your first service is at 8:30 and you have a worship night the night before, you wake up feeling like a truck hit you.
Gotta keep going. Just keep moving. Don't sit down.
I was so proud of our people. Like, we had so many people here both Saturday night for our worship night and then back on Sunday for everything. Good job to you.
Yeah, I will say that I could feel a lack of energy in the rally. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm not pushing.
You're like, I feel it as well. So we're
right.
just
I'm like, there's no point in giving it like, come on, guys.
For the fourth time.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
For the fourth time. But then we had a great celebration morning. We showed the documentary that JL Video put together. That is going to be posted on this same YouTube channel, right?
It's already there.
Oh, it's already there?
It's already there.
4K?
4K,
so it's processing, uploading, all that jazz.
I uploaded it last night, and when I went to bed, it was still 360p because I hadn't finished the renderings.
Yeah, when I
everything.
saw it on my TV after it had been uploaded for about 30 minutes, it was still not in HD.
Right. So this morning, I woke up this morning, I pulled it up, and it's like 4K was there, but it's like 2000.
2160.
Yeah, 2160.
So this double 1080.
P, and so in parentheses, it said 4K, and I was like, okay, good, it finished all
Kelly's
the renderings.
I'm more like a 14 karat K. 14 karat K. I don't know. Is 14K still good for gold?
I don't know. I haven't really bought like a real gold thing in a while.
Speaking of gold, New Life Golden is launching soon. Kelly, give us a 30-second promo of what New Life Golden is.
Well, We've talked a lot about how we are multi-generational church, and we love that. And over the past several years, we've really grown in that age demographic. So we have
For two reasons. One, more people have come, and then the other is people have gotten older.
We just get older. It just happens, you know? Like, as you're talking about 10 years as a church, we're 10 years older. It's crazy. So we are very excited to offer some social events. We're going to be having probably starting out like an every other month luncheon that would be catered and have some entertainment, and it is for our New Life Golden group.
And if people are interested in finding out more, what should they just email groups at?
They
Trinity New
can.
Life?
Or you can register right on the app.
Oh, okay.
As well. The
There you go.
registration is open for it, which will have information, payment, and the dates and all of that. So.
All right. And remember, coming up later on in the video, we're going to tell you what to comment below to enter into our prize giveaway as soon as I think of it. So then after the documentary, I got up and got a chance to be able to preach on really the foundation. What we're doing during the series is taking some of the words that I felt like God has given me for seasons of time in the church and kind of re-preaching them to, again, make sure that we've got that identity. I know a lot of times people will do stuff like that in January because it's a new year. I've always felt that more in February around anniversary of who we are as a church, to be able to talk about, like, here's the season of time that we're going in. Oh, I didn't, you.
Oh, I was just breathing.
Yeah.
Just need air to breathe. Nose is a little stuffy.
So I just didn't, I didn't want to just preach these random messages. So this was a chance to go back, and this was, again, the whole idea of why it's New Life, why it's our why it's our name, and why we are who we are. And, but then again, talking about that mandate of we have to believe in the new life of the gospel, and we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to not preach behavior, but to preach new life.
Right. I think the sermon series that's going along with this decade idea of when you walk into the church right now, you see that timeline, and everybody kind of comes in the different seasons. And so to be able to hear the full line, starting from this week's message, which we're talking about New Life, that's where we got the church name from, to then move into how the rest of these sermons will play into that. That's going to tell a very full story of the spiritual foundation that the church has laid. And I'm excited to see and hear that, especially for so many people. It was so fun yesterday. The people who were like, can I just draw on this line right here since I've only been coming? And we're like, yes, right there. And so the very
March
new,
one?
the very, the very end of the timeline right now. And that is exciting for me. How many people have never heard the full stories of, hopefully, because you do share a lot of the New Life, the message you preached yesterday, but where we got our name. You share that in our newcomers events.
Right.
When people come to the church, they kind of hear that story. But going into these next couple weeks, looking at how that's...
Oh, I just had this moment that I did not hit record on the audio, but I did, so we're good.
Oh, I looked at that.
I have that panic every single week.
Anyway, that's why these next 3 weeks, this last week, this next 3 weeks are so important for our people. That's why we're making these big Sunday pushes. That's why we know spring break is coming up, but we really come early before you leave for vacation, come back
early. Spring break is every year. Decade is once every 10 years.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun.
Kelly, one of the first things I start the story of us moving with is that I came home from this lunch.
I remember it well.
And what, my story or the event, the
moment.
It
was big in my life too. It wasn't.
So I always say I came home, I laid face on the carpet, and I said, honey, we're moving.
Yes.
Now that's my story. What was your story of hearing where I was mumbling
I
into the
just
carpet?
had a sense of, okay, that's what we're doing. And that's not always me. I will have, wait, what do you mean? How is that going to happen? But what's going to happen first? And I will have a lot of questions. And there was just this sense of settled, calm peace of, okay, that's what we're going to do then. And then I remember driving down here. When did we drive down here to?
It was before
March.
It was in March.
I think it was in March.
Yeah, it was before the
So
boot
we moved
camp.
in July.
Because the assessment center was in early March. I think it was
Yes.
right after my birthday, right
Right.
before my birthday. Because I remember telling people about it at Caroline's birthday party.
Telling people about what? The boot
I remember,
camp?
the assessment center, what it was like
that's what I
for
meant.
us.
Sorry.
I remember telling the Owens, the Middletons, here's what this is like, here's what this experience. And it was at Caroline's first birthday party. So obviously it was right around the beginning of March.
Yeah.
And then we drove down here sometime the middle of March.
I don't know all that. I just remember coming down.
But the boot camp was in May because you didn't go to that one.
No, I didn't. I just remember coming down, and it wasn't the same of, oh, we're here visiting our family, because obviously, not obviously if you don't know, Clayton grew up in Newport Richey, and his parents live in the same house where they grew up, and I grew up in Tarpon, and my parents still live there. And so every time we came back to the area, it was just like a hometown return. You hit your favorite things, you get your good
Mr.
Greek
Souvlaki's.
food, right? Yeah, that you want. See friends that still might, live in the area. But we kind of came down with fresh eyes of where would we live? Like, we've never come down here thinking, where would we live before? And what is this area like? And asking different questions than what we had ever asked. And it was great that this Trinity area, it felt new to us because it didn't exist when we were here. I drove through like cow pastures to get to your house in high school. When we were dating, there wasn't buildings, and so at least
we don't need to start the Pinellas Pasco rivalry this early in the podcast.
Pinellas,
because especially with you two.
But it felt new, and it felt like a place that we can make our own and not just come back to a hometown that we already had. You know what I mean? Memories and stuff.
Okay, so I have another question about things from your perspective, because one of the things that happened when we moved that March, when we just visited that March, I had a friend who was a teacher and a coach at Mitchell High School, Brian Wattell. He was going into his first year as the head coach, and I had baptized him, I had performed his wedding, and he said, look, whatever you want to do, you can do. Like, you can come be a leadership coach, be the chaplain. I want you to come and do whatever you want to do. And to me, it was at Tijuana Flats. Yeah. There were these high top tables that they don't have anymore. Then that's where we were sitting. And so that to me was like, that settled that this is the area that we were coming down in. But you have mentioned that we were thinking about either Wesley Chapel or Trinity. When was that? Do you remember when that?
I think that was just that first time in March.
Back and forth?
When we
never drove to Wesley Chapel and looked around, right?
No, but we were just trying to think of what are new up and coming areas that weren't as quite as established. We didn't even drive around there, but it was just something we threw around. We both kind of thought like, well, that's just a little far away from where our family lives, and we knew we were going to need their help desperately. So it's just kind of just outside of, come swing by and pick this up or help us with this.
I think I remember talking and asking my mom and her saying this Trinity area and maybe Wesley Chapel, maybe that's why that was in our head, were the areas that were really growing. And you actually see a lot of churches, a lot of church plants were happening in Wesley Chapel at the time. It's not the way now. I just had lunch with a pastor from Wesley Chapel, but there was a point where every school, at least every elementary school in Wesley Chapel had a church plant in it. Yeah. And again, I think there was even one time where somebody said every school had a church plant in it in Wesley Chapel. And churches that were trying to be planted along the 54 corridor, because again, we moved in July of 09. We're just on the outside edge of the 08 recession, which really paused the Trinity Odessa area in growth for a long time. Were you guys already in your house in Trinity West? Or
we moved
Trinity neighborhood. West Oaks East.
It's Trinity.
South.
You're right. Trinity West. We
never assume I have it right.
I'm trying to think. 10 years ago, 2009 is when we moved into that house. So we've been in our house for just over 10 years now. We were in Trinity when Mike and I first got married. So before, like, Walmart's opening weekend is when right after we got married, we moved in the house, and it was the grand opening of Walmart. There's no Publix. The 54, it was just the 54 it was just a Walmart. There was nothing else there. It was just Walmart. 7-Eleven wasn't even there yet.
I've lived in Pasco County so long that old 54 was just
the only 54. It was just how you got over here.
And so then we moved back.
County Road.
When the recession started happening, we were renting, so it made very nice for those of us who had savings to buy a house in that time period. So we were able, that's when we purchased in Trinity, was 2009.
Okay, so we moved down. Yeah, we had this. So Emily and Jamie, we tell the story. You literally called Emily, and she was like, we were on the Every Nation website that day looking for it. Africa, who was at second service yesterday, she was from our church in Tallahassee. She moved with us. Stephanie Huffman was with our church in Tallahassee. She moved with us, but the only job that she could find as a teacher was in Brandon.
Wow. Or Plant City or something, right?
Yeah, Riverview, Brandon area.
Wow.
So she was driving up for the launch scene, but then even before that, she's like, I can't keep doing, and that made total sense to us. But she was our kids person that we were going to have run that, and so that's when Kelly had to step in to run the kids department at that point. And then Emily and Jamie, Tristan Tully at the time.
Yes.
She had been a part of our church until she was from this area and was living back down here. And then my sister, Cassidy.
And then Tristan invited Candy. Candy
Tristan,
came to the first.
Candy McDowell now.
Baylor.
Candy Baylor, who also just had a baby. What's the baby's name again?
I know it.
Nope.
Nope.
It's not Circe. It's
Khalees.
Khalees. I was like, it's a Game of Thrones-esque
name.
Comment below something that I'm going to say in just a moment, because I know what it is now. But it's not what's your favorite Game of Thrones characters. So
We wouldn't know.
we wouldn't know. And so that was our launch team. There was a couple other people that were a Jace, but never really.
Mom
your
and
mom.
Mima, Sarah and Eric a little.
Yeah,
Right.
it's funny.
Were you hearing about this at this time?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Emily and Chayil have been best friends growing up for a while.
Yeah, middle school, high school, freshman year, high school, a long time. But and this wasn't the first church plant they had been a part of.
No.
They have been a part of 2 or 3 other church plants. So by the time this church plant came into Jamie and Emily's, like, I had already been to a lot of church plants with
They were
Jamie
part
and
of
Emily.
one that was meeting on Sunday nights.
Saturday nights.
Okay, Saturday nights. And went through like a $200,000 budget in 6 months.
And Mike was on that. Mike was part of that. Like, Mike played for that launch team.
So I
was
have
a
no idea
part
about
of all
any
of
of the
that.
information about
We
that. So
were
I'm
part-
not like selling people
Right.
out or forgetting to avoid saying names. I don't know anything other than that.
Again, we were still heavily invested in. Actually, that church plant probably was right between we were changing churches about that time, and so there was a possibility that we would have been a part of that. And like they had asked Mike, Saturday nights was good night for him to play because we weren't committed anywhere on Sundays, and we had been through that with Emily. So when she started talking about Trinity, well, it wasn't Trinity. I don't think she had a name yet. Just Kelly Ulmer's husband's church.
Kelly Ulmer's boyfriend.
Kelly Ulmer's boy. Like, it's really, yes. That
Again,
was the
more Pinellas
connection.
Pasco war happening right there.
That was the connection that it had. It was one of those. Well, we had 3 small children. We were looking for something, and we were going.
You were used to house churches.
We were used to these types of things, and so we were like, we're going to go to a church with a really incredible kids ministry for a little bit, because our kids were at that age. They were all in elementary school, that kind of thing, and you let us know how it goes. And I think that, like, I mean, you look back. I remember you guys collected coats because Emily came and picked up a bunch of coats from us. Yep. The reason that I was at a Christmas service was because I was dropping things off for Emily that night. Like, the church was meeting right outside our neighborhood. So we passed the Trinity New Life signs on our way to church every Sunday.
I'll come back to that. I'll ask a question about that.
So there was always the adjacent thing. So, like, I very vividly remember a lot of the stories and things happening.
And that was one of the most common refrains that we got from people when we were asking, do you want to help us plant the church? And they were like, launch the church. And they're like, let us know when you have services going.
I'm like, but we can't unless you come. Just come. Yeah.
I know. It's like that Austin Powers, like, I eat because I'm unhappy. I'm unhappy because I eat. I'm like,
I was like, at one point, there'll be a turning point where there's enough people.
There was.
That somebody would be like, now I can come instead.
I think it was January. I think it was January preview service. I was going to come. I was actually in my car on my way, and Hannah threw up in the car on our drive.
Flipping Hannah.
And
comment below if you're also mad at Hannah.
No, don't
we
do
love
that.
Hannah.
But she got sick, and so I was in the car. I was like, not gonna make it this time. And so it's funny when you look back at the way God moves and God operates things, because you guys moved to Trinity in 2009. I moved to Trinity in 2009. Emily, like, the way everything just kind of like lined up, but God just, when he opens a door, like, he does it in his time. He doesn't put things into season too early or too late, and just the way that all that happened was really a cool story.
That's one of the reasons why I felt like, man, we need to get to our services as fast as we can. A lot of church planners will ask me, like, what were some of your best comeback events? And
They
I was
weren't.
like, none.
They were awful.
We
just had to get through them and try to
I think
not,
you should just
like,
do
be
more
miserable.
preview services.
Yes.
I think that's what you should do. I think you should do more like soft opening services and getting better at it. But we didn't, I make this joke about Jamie, like, Africa could sing, but we had no instrumentalists. And so we were trying to figure out, what are we going to do on our first day? And Jamie's like, I'll learn the guitar parts. And then, either the swine flu or the bird flu.
One of those flus at the time.
Whatever was the flu du jour.
Whatever the
at
coronavirus of the time was.
So then that happened, and he's like, well, no, my uncle is like kind of available.
Right,
Maybe he had
that's
recently gotten
His timeline had
available.
opened. His
Yeah.
timeline had just opened up for him.
But then, so I ended up calling a friend from our Tallahassee church who drove down and played guitar. He was on the worship team there. He was actually the night before, or I don't know if it was the night before or whatever, was in Atlanta at a Mute Math concert for their Flesh and Bones live album recording.
It's really
Drove.
detailed.
It is really detailed because he swears he can hear himself at one point in time singing. And so Sam drove down, but then right as I was driving, because what we used to do is set up on Saturday night because I think the gym closed around 4 or 6 p.m. or there was no classes after a certain period of time, and they would let us go in. And I got this phone call from this guy, and he said that he heard about our church plant from one of the pastors of the church he had been a part of in Jacksonville, South Point. He was at USF. Could he come? Did we need any help? And I was like, sure. And that's how Bryce Ayers came. He had bounced around to a couple different churches in the USF area, and then came up and helped us set up. Came the next day, helped us set up and do all the stuff. And then it really wasn't until I think we were tearing down on Sunday, and he's like, "Oh, I used to sing and play on the team at South Point. I know these songs." And I was like, "Okay." Oh my gosh, man. Like, why are you waiting till? Did you hear what we were doing?
He did, and that's why he was
That's
like,
why
"Let
he
me
said
offer
something.
my
Maybe I
services."
should let you
he's
have
like, it's too
this.
soon to jump in and be able to save it the day of.
Yeah.
But the next, so then from then on, he was. We actually went to lunch that week, and he was like, "I would love to be a part if it's okay." I was like, "Yes." Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how he became a part of it. And then, do you remember Kristen and Casey them getting connected?
Yeah, of course.
Would you like to tell that story for the podcast?
Well, Casey drove over for some preview services to help with the media
But just as a real
team.
quick, like 30-second, how we knew them.
A real quick. Clayton and I were doing campus ministry when Kristen and Casey were students at FSU. And so I met Kristen, I think at my house the first time she came to a Bible study I was leading for college girls. And
Comment below which one you like better, Kristen or No, I'm just kidding. That's not it. We haven't gotten there yet.
No. And Clayton handed Casey a flyer the first day that he was on campus and
Do you know
invited
where the
him to one
mailboxes are? Yes.
Yes, here's a flyer for
Victory
our campus
week.
event. And so we were friends. I mean, we hung out. Caroline and Samantha were born just a few months from each other, and so they've known each other since birth. And so the Sheffields moved to Orlando for a year for Casey's job, and they just never quite felt as settled there. And when they knew we were planning the church here, just praying about it, they felt a connection and just wanted to help build this with us. And
Yeah,
so,
they just reached out to us.
right. So I was so thankful just to have another friend, especially when you're in those toddler years and you're home and you just want someone to raise your kids with you and buckle them in the car seat when you can't buckle your own kid in. And you're like, she's like steel. Can you get her in? But yeah, so they moved over really soon after. I think
I think they only missed the November preview service. I think they drove over for the December one, drove over for the January one.
Yes, I
And
think
then they
Casey
had
drove over
moved.
before Kristen could.
Okay.
I think he did on his own for the first couple, and then I think they moved in February.
I think they moved before the February one. Okay. I mean, they would know that for certain. But I remember, so the way we found a house in the area, because we were living in Tallahassee, I was just checking Craigslist over and over and over again for rentals.
Craigslist.
Found one.
Nice.
And my parents went over and videotaped it,
Yeah.
sent us the videos, and we went, okay. Agreed to it. And then when we came, we were here in June we were flying out of Tampa for a conference in DC. I can't remember if it was on the way there or the way back. I want to say the way back. We toured the house. There was somebody living in there who was taking care of their parent. And they were super heavy smokers in the garage and everything. And they're like, we're going to paint everything. And the landlord actually did a really great job turning the house around. We kind of walked around and went, okay, signed the contract on the back of her car in the driveway, and then went to an anniversary dinner at Mystic Fish. And we're like, well, we're definitely moving.
Did it.
Done.
Yeah, but the same thing happened with the Sheffields. They were in over in Orlando. They were like, hey, can you go check this out? And I went and videotaped it all, kind of pasted off and was like, here's my best guess of what it is. And they were like,
Okay.
Yeah. I do remember too. I remember moving the day we moved. Brian had so many of the football team meet us there. God bless them. They got our truck unloaded in about 17 minutes.
Scuffed up a little furniture on the way in,
Not
but
exactly as
got it in
concerned.
quickly.
Jamie and Emily met us. There was another couple we thought was going to move from Tallahassee with us, James and Jessica Seymour. They ended up not moving, but they had come down for the weekend to stay with us and help us move. And one of the big things we were first trying to figure out was duck slew or duck slough.
How do we say this word,
What is
everybody?
this word?
The answer is you can say it either
Either
way.
way, both are correct.
I say duck slew.
I say slew.
But you can't. There's a correct pronunciation on both sides. Remember, Emily and Jamie came over, helped us move in, and we had pizza that night, hung out. That was a really great. That was just like this kind of like, we're here. And I was like, what do you do? And I remember the next day, I think we moved on a Saturday. We were going to go to church on Sunday, and there was a church I knew that was meeting in the YMCA, where I was like, let's just go see what a portable church looks like, Bay Point. And I'd already made a connection with the pastor, and we went to go, and we just checked their website randomly, and they'd actually moved. They had moved to a building off of
Mile Stretch.
Thank you. Mile Stretch Road in Holiday. So we actually ended up going there and kind of observing and reconnecting with them. And that is how we ended up getting into the YMCA, because I had a connection with this pastor, but I didn't know how to get back with him. And so this name is Brian Brown. He ended up letting us use the building anytime we wanted to on Saturdays.
Right.
I actually got a key for it. We did all of our copies there, had a little office kind of in the copy room, a little space on the desk.
I think that's the best thing about that first
Speakers.
year.
They give us speakers, soundboards.
Right. How much was just provided before we even asked? It was just like, what do you need? Here's a trailer. Here's this.
Well, Hal
Here's,
Mayer, who was a pastor of Church of the Church of the Bay, they were moving from portable to portable location, and they didn't have as much storage, and so they said, come shopping for anything you want.
Yeah.
This is all the extra children's church stuff. And we got a chance to recently do that with a local church in Tampa. And then the trailer you're talking about, Chris Curtis was the pastor of Trinity Community Church, which previously had met in Trinity Elementary. They had just moved.
Look at that, all setting the stage.
They had just moved and merged with what was called River Ridge Presbyterian and become Redeemer Community Church. And so I was just meeting with them just to say, like, tell me what it's like to plant a church in the Trinity Odessa area. They had moved out of Trinity Elementary into Trinity College and was like, we don't like this. And then had ended up merging with Redeemer. And I said, Chris said, look, I don't have any money, but what can I do? And I was like, are you selling your trailer? I just know you went from portable to permanent. Can we buy your trailer? And he goes, no, you can just have it. Because we were probably the dumbest portable church plant ever, in that we did not have a trailer. Some of these
we didn't know.
are,
we just said yes. We just said yes.
no idea.
Some churches
like,
have an
what are we
actual
doing?
trailer on property.
Some churches will actually not only have a trailer on property, they will have, they get a U-Haul. They basically buy a U-Haul, used U-Haul truck. We didn't even have our own trailer. So in our preview services, my dad worked at a car dealership, so he was taking
would just
home
get
an
a
extended bed truck, and then we would load up all the cars, move it all over, set it all up, and then it was just being kept in our garage.
God was probably like, oh, y'all are cute. Let me help you out. Let me just say what.
Well, this is the interesting.
This is what I'm saying is people are like, I just don't know if I like how many bathrooms we have, and you're like, you guys.
no idea.
This is just the testament to the way, like, man, is God good. Statistically speaking, when you talk to church, when you read church plant books, when you read all of these, you study this thing, on paper, Trinity should not have existed 6 to 12 months later, because they talk about the size of your launch team, and like you take that number and you double that, and that's what you should be at for these things, and like your launch team was like 12 people,
and half of them had never been to church before.
Right.
So when we would do a strategic planning meeting with David Houston, he's like, what do you guys think? And they're like, ugh. And he would tell me later, like, I'd like to hear a few more answers from them. I'm like, David, they have no framework. They have no idea what to think.
Right. So you like when you know those stories, when you know that aspect of things, and you look to see, this is why it's so easy for us to look out on a Sunday morning and be like, wow, like, you guys, like, this is not anything that we could have ever done.
Right.
Like, this is not a man-made, this is not really good strategic people sitting down in front of a whiteboard going, hey, we can make this happen. Like, no, this is the power of God coming in going,
Yeah.
there's something special here. There's something that I want to do in this place at this time with these people. Let's make this all happen.
Yeah, moments of grace
So much.
are the things that I've done. Actually, now I've gone back and I've done assessing of church planners twice. And one of the things I'm always looking for, it's really, really hard to get on a resume and get on a paper and a personality test, is moments of grace.
Right.
But we didn't, Brian Brown hooking us up with all this sound equipment, which we still, I guess we've now officially moved on. We still have the speakers and the mains, the subs and the mains.
Yep.
But we
Don't use the board anymore.
we don't use the board anymore. The board fizzled out pretty quick. Kevin Dory, this random guy, I don't even know how we found each other, who helped us to purchase all the sound equipment. I didn't know what any of it was. The TV that New Life Students pulls back and forth, and the other ones underneath the stage, which we're hoping to try to get double-sided on that. Those were the first TVs we ever used. We didn't use projector because the room only had like a 9-foot ceiling, so there was no place to project. So we had to go with TVs. Those TVs still work. There's so many of those moments in that.
It was great.
Some of our signs that were terrible.
Like our actual signs?
Yeah,
Or,
I would
okay,
go
I
and
was
get
like
'em
signs
printed.
from God or like actual signs.
I would go and get them printed, and then we'd like spray paint them onto like foam core.
Yeah.
That's special.
God bless.
Special.
You know what? God's faithful.
But you're gonna have
But
like
that's
you know
why-
what? I was like, yes,
I just know.
God's faithful.
God's sovereign and faithful. He covers over a multitude.
But this is exactly the stuff. This is why we're taking 4 weeks to celebrate. Because we can't sit down in one podcast or in one service and share all the stories and all the moments. Like trying to get a documentary down. I mean, we had 7 hours of recording on a Saturday with our lead team. Of the 7 hours of recording time, I think JL Video ended up with about 3.5 hours of actual footage to go through to reduce down to, I think the first edit was just at 20 minutes, and they were like, we're still working on this. We're getting this down to and then it was, I think the first pass we had was 16 minutes. We got it down to like 14. Like, we can't do this all in one time. That's why for 4 weeks, that's where we're taking these messages. We're going to hear these stories. On the podcast, we're going to share more stories just throughout the experiences and everything that God's just done. Because in 10 years, there is so much of God's faithfulness and God's sovereignty and God's grace that it's important for us to take this time. Again, a decade only happens once every 10 years. Like, let's take this time and really share these experiences and these stories and these moments.
Yeah, the documentary is semi-chronological, semi-personal story based. We kind of started to put some of the personal stories in order of how these people started to appear in the lifestyle of the life of the church. Carly and the Sheffields are out of order in that, but then that became like this age group, and then kind of each individual has their own chronology of
In their story, yeah.
Some of the video use of like the Schrader kids and how tiny they are is really great. So I just, that was fantastic, but we're almost to the end where I'm going to tell you what to comment
what's
below.
your favorite moment?
Oh, I don't
That was
even
the
know.
question.
Oh, that was
How
the
could
question.
you,
The
like,
question was, what
you
was
get
our
a
favorite
question,
moment
you don't even
and
answer it.
why? And
I can go.
Okay.
you're the only
Well,
one that
I
has an
remember like they're all both kind of early on, maybe within the first few years, but the first 2, maybe 3 years, everyone was connected, I felt like, through us. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause there's not as many people. And so it was just kind of like, I felt that pressure to be like, I have to say hi and connect with every single person that came in because I felt like we were their touch point. And I remember there was just a conversation that I had, or I saw other people having a conversation and making plans. And it was just this, oh, they're connecting without me. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like when it just starts taking a life of its own and it becomes, so many people said their home and their family, and it wasn't, connect with this and let me get this, you two should connect. It was just starting to happen. So I remember that when it transitioned from us feeling like we had to carry the weight of the connection every Sunday morning, that was a big moment of growth for me and maturity for the church. And then I remember one Sunday being at Challenger, and it was probably the first Sunday where everyone was walking up for communion. And I looked around, and up until that point, you kind of know everyone that's coming in the doors, and maybe not always like the name to the face, but like, oh yeah, I recognize them and I have a story to go with them. But sitting up there and seeing people come walking up and looking like, who is that? where do they come from? How do they hear about this? And just realizing, God, like, this is your church, this is your body, and you're so faithful to call people to it, you know.
I don't want to give any moments because I don't think I'm going to say it as good as you just said. Because that was really good. For me, it is those similar moments. I can't remember specific times. I remember it might have been the Christmas. It was it was either a Christmas or Easter inside of Trinity Elementary. And our parents were always asking us how many people came, how many people are coming.
If we had a family dinner or lunch after church, we were going to get grilled.
Yeah. I mean, even now when it's like, I don't know, 1,975, you know, like it's always just like a lot.
Yeah.
Once you break 1,000, I feel like maybe now I just need to 1,500. Like I don't even know.
What's the next? Yeah.
What's the next number? Where I think about the number now, I'm like, wait, how many people responded? What's the impact? My mom was asking me, like, she's like, how many people do you think are coming? And I was like, I have no idea. Because I think prior to that, in a very similar way you're talking about connection, I feel like almost everybody who came because I invited them. And I was like, I feel like it's spun away from me.
Right.
And now I don't know. And it ended up being like, I think that might have been the first time we were over 300 again. So I can't remember if that was an Easter or Christmas.
That was Easter. Well, first time over 300 was Easter.
So I can't remember when this was, but I know it was in the elementary school. I mean, baptizing Caroline is, you know, incredible and really special. But I think there's so many moments. Yesterday was pretty great. I feel like there was just a real, I want to include Saturday night in that.
Absolutely. So I didn't cry yesterday because I cried all Saturday night. You know, I was like, I'm just here to smile and shoot off confetti and be the best, you know. But I felt like I had some real emotional moments Saturday with everything and just hearing songs and going back to the times we first played them, you know, or what I was feeling even when that song was a popular one for us or something. So it was Saturday were my tears, and Sunday was just celebration, which I thought was so fun.
I felt a real maturity to the church and a comfort, you know, personally.
Yesterday.
Saturday, I was really just along for the ride, and it was great. You know, Mason and I usually debrief very quickly, but I was just like, no, it was great. I mean, there wasn't much to talk about. I was like, that was awesome. And the team had really prepped, and we've learned so much from doing worship nights. And do you remember the most distinctive thing about our first worship night?
Oh,
the smell?
The smell, the cow pasture breeze coming in. It was still really great, though, inside.
It was really great inside. John Owens was down for that. So I think those three moments for me.
I couldn't answer this question.
All right, comment below what Chayil's favorite moment. No,
that's not the giveaway. I mean, there have been a lot of moments, and I think the difficult, not the difficult, but the part that makes the question difficult would be the idea of like, like the moment where I grew, the moment that I celebrated, the moment that I cried, the moment that I because all of those are different. Like, and I think there's so many there. All three of my kids have been baptized now here. Hannah was baptized in Honduras on a missions trip with us. Like she decided to brave the mountainside pool in a Honduran mountain. It's great photos, and she played in the water afterwards, and I just prayed safety over all of her. I was like, I mean, have fun. And
amoebas or
best
whatever.
friends. But all three of the kids have been now baptized here. Watching them serve has always been a highlight moment for me, not just on Sunday mornings, but just even in the kids' room. I remember the first time Hannah served, and Jaden have served in NLK and holding baby. My kids are my children. They like babies too. They like to play, and those moments. But then I think there are a lot of really significant moments that I'll hold near and dear to me for what God was speaking to me in that time, and you can go back to worship nights or engage services or those, and it's like to find one. That's a really hard question.
Dumb
it's
question,
a really
Doug.
question.
Make us choose one.
Don't make us choose one memorable moment.
I have another one once you're done.
But I will say there was an Easter where I had announcements. See, you're still adding more memorable moments. Stop over there. There was an Easter where I did announcements, and I forgot the script. like I don't know what it was, like that something happened on the slide and I just skipped the welcome, the guest portion, just went straight to the announcement part. And that there's a great photo of me. Thank you, Stephanie Beatty, who took a photo with the logo slide at the side. And I love the photo, but every time I see that photo, I'm like, that is the one time that I was like, can I please just walk off the stage now? I am done. I have opened my mouth. Words should not have come out. I was just like, yeah. So that will always go down as my biggest. That was definitely a memorable flub laugh moment.
I remember that first worship night. I remember a moment in that where I feel like, these maturity marking moments. I feel like there was a moment in that worship night, that first one with John Owens. I feel like that John's been with us two or three times for that. And then I remember walking into Challenger the first time. Were you with me when we went with Bill?
I think so.
Okay. That was our real estate.
You remember days and times and events better than I do. I think, when you have.
I remember walking into Challenger the first time. We had been looking for land or a place in the area. Looked at another place on the other side of the industrial park that thank goodness we did not get in that.
That one, so I must have been
there
too.
I don't know. And then we were trying to could we abate the rent a little bit, or could we graduate the rent a little bit? We can't get in at the starting price, and I don't think so. And then he called me back and he said, "I think I've got another place for you," and went and looked at Challenger. Obviously our current location, and I walked in and I could immediately see it. And we have looked at so many, not a ton of places before that, but I feel like we've looked at so many pieces of land. We've looked at so many buildings, and you're like, how come we're not in that building? Because it's not great. It would not be good.
Right.
And I walked in and I was like, I can see it. I could see it real clear. I could see it real easy. And that made it a lot easier to try to move into the situation we're in and going through that. And so thank goodness, one of the buildings, the other side of the building that we were looking at on the other side of the industrial park was the same size, but had no parking.
Right.
And then
it was full of things too. Remember how, it was just a mess. I was like, I can't.
This one was real open. And then the one that we wanted before this was only 7,500 square feet. So try and imagine our space problems now. We'd either be at 9 services or we would be stunted in growth.
Right.
So thank goodness we didn't have it. So comment below.
Is this official now?
I think so. You guys can adjust it if you want to. When did you start coming to TNLC?
Yeah.
When did you start coming to TNLC? Comment below. Chayil, we're going to randomly draw a winner on what day?
Well, do we want to make it are we doing a giveaway for this podcast, or are we doing it for the Decade series
This podcast. Let's do this podcast.
Then before we record the next podcast.
Okay. So it has to be before Sunday at 3 p.m.
Yep.
And we're going to announce it on next week's podcast.
There you go.
Sunday, March 15th.
Are you going to tell the people what they're
3
winning?
3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't want to hear any of this. March 15th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Your comment has to be in before that. Then we're going to randomly draw it, announce it on Monday. And what are they going to win, Chayil?
They are going to win a Decade giveaway package. So our shirts, we had some Decade shirts that sold out fast. Guys,
yes,
I not only ordered I took not only was the number of shirts that we ordered for the last round of shirts, but I added more shirts. I was like, oh, these will go a little bit faster because they're Decade shirts. Guys, before the end of first service, they were nearly gone. So I'm very glad that we decided to space out all of the Decade merch, because this upcoming Sunday is our next Decade. Well, it's not the Decade merch, but we have some TNLC merch we're selling this week and the week after. So today's giveaway is a package of the entire merch giveaway packet. So you'll get a shirt, you'll get a hat, and you'll get some socks.
That's right. And if you have already bought a shirt and you've already bought a hat,
they haven't bought anything yet because they haven't been on sale.
For everybody
they
else.
bought a shirt, maybe.
Well, they might. What if they don't buy the things this Sunday because they think they're going to win?
Oh, well, then they'll have an extra hat.
And if you haven't commented, then you know that you haven't won. So that's our podcast for today. Yep. Reminder, podcast at Trinity New Life, Instagram, Trinity New Life. And if you're listening on terrestrial radio, I don't know how you did that because it's not on it. But if you're listening via audio podcast and you want to enter the contest, go to YouTube, Trinity New Life Church, or Trinity New Life, one of the two.
YouTube.com/Trinity New Life.
YouTube.com/Trinity New Life. Find this episode 100 and leave a comment below of when you started coming to TNLC, and that'll enter you in to win. Kelly, any final thoughts?
No, it's great. I love this month. I can't wait. for all the Sundays.
Chayil, any final thoughts?
I'll be back next week.
All right. See you guys. Have a wonderful week.
Bye, everyone.